Okay, I'm doing a video about Babcia Brona, so that's my mom's mom. She was very loving and kind, like most Babcias, but really witty and clever, emotionally intelligent, and like completely magical. You could describe her as a white witch. She was told she was a white witch by the white witches in her village when she was growing up. She was born, they didn't have, this is so wild, they didn't have, for Babcia we have to be like, everything's wild and magical, and like we just have to go with that because it's not a normal situation. They didn't have birth certificates when she was born. They didn't do that, so she was just in a village. So if you asked her what year she was born, she didn't know. She just knew that she was a kid during the war, in the Second World War. So she might have even been a teenager during the Second World War. And we just don't know because she didn't know how old she was. She also picked a random birthday because she wanted to celebrate that in a kind of Western way. When she got to the UK, she wanted to sort of celebrate that. Eventually she came up with a birthday which was July 17th, and that's how my mom celebrated her birthday and how other family members celebrated her birthday and friends. We just said it was July 17th because they said her mom and dad in Poland had said, in Belarus they had said she was born at the harvest or at this particular time, so they knew it was kind of like summer that her birthday was, but they didn't know which year. So it was funny because she was born in the forest between Poland and Russia, and right now on the map it's Belarus, but she was the oldest of all the kids, so she was raised in like a little hut. She had to go to school one time, and when she went to school they told her that Stalin was the best, and she came back to her table and sat down at her dinner table and said that to her dad, and her dad slapped her because Stalin is not the best. And I don't think she went to that school again. And she was just there to look after the other children, and that's why she was so loving. She also had to, at one point, her mom and dad had to go away. Somebody was ill or someone had to travel and they had to leave the kids. So Babcia her name was Bronisława. That's what she was born as. And in Scotland, we call her Brona. People called her Brona, like Scottish people would be like Brona this, Brona that, like that was her first name. Everyone called her Babcia Brona. Babcia is just, she was everybody's Babcia. And so when her parents went away one time, she went into the forest with her little siblings that she was the oldest one of, and she took them to explore, and they found a beehive and they just lay on that beehive and ate all the honey, and they got stung. So they got totally stung, and she was just popping their, what the hell's that? Pure scrunchie up my sleeve. Hidden scrunchie. She had this ability to just pop her brother and sister's swelling, like pussy, bites from the wasps and the bees, the stinging. It was like worth it to get that honey. The other aspect of her life is wild because she grew up like speaking Russian, not Polish. So she used to tell us to milch when I was being hyper. She'd be like milch when I was a kid. And milch is like a Russian word, it's not a Polish word. And you'd be, you knew you were kind of in trouble if Babcia Brona would be going like that, because she never went like that. So you had to make sure you weren't actually doing that. And she would she'd want you to be a lady and behave. So she also told me that I'm a white witch. She said, you have what I had, which is the clairvoyance, the clairaudience. You can hear a song and understand what it means emotionally. You can see the future, you can see the past, you can you know someone's thoughts, you can hear emotions, you can finish people's sentences, you know who someone is before you see them, you know what someone's vibe is when you meet them, you can get an emotional read on people. You see stuff, you get information from your dreams, you get information from other people's dreams, you're tapped in. Everything that is clairvoyant, you can have other versions of clairvoyance where you feel stuff before it's going to happen and things like that. That's all very, or you just know information. Like I would meet soldiers from the war and I would know what regiment they'd been in, or people who I didn't know, I would say, you were a gunner in this regiment for this amount of time in the Second World War. And these guys would be like, how do you know I was a gunner? I was too tall to be a gunner, but yeah, I was a gunner, but they told me that I had to do it because they didn't have any short guys. And I'd be like, yeah, so there was things like that. Oh my God, there's always beeping on my street. With these windows, there's such like Victorian 1700 sandstone buildings. They don't have double glazing. Don't put double glazing on your old buildings, guys, because it doesn't look good. But also, I like the old windows, even if they make a noise. Oh, you can hear the noise outside. I like hearing the crowds. You know you're in Finiston when it's like noisy outside at night. It's not that noisy, oh my God, what am I talking about? So Babcia Brona was all those things, but they had a very happy marriage. Her mom wore like bother boots, like Doc Martens, when a Doc Marten craze happened in the 90s. Babcia said that her mum used to wear boots like that it was a normal thing they did all the time. They would wear boots with dresses and stuff. So there was this feeling that there was a deep love in the marriage with her mum and dad. Babcia Zosha was my Babcia's mum. They loved each other for so long, and then when she died first, and then he went with her to like join her in heaven. He really felt like that when he was passing away. The idea of varklache and like having hair, like girls always had like braids in their hair, like pleats. Babcia Brona would always put us in these massive curls. Like every night, anytime I stayed at her house, she would put my hair in curls at night. So when I would wake up, I would have curly hair, even if I was just gonna sit in her house. Rosu, she would make every Sunday. She did every Polish meal, gołąbki. She made borscht, she made kotlets, she made babka. One time I was asking her, she made pierogi from scratch, everything from scratch. I was asking her one time how to make babka, and I was going like this, and she was so upset with me for turning it the wrong way. She was like, you're unstirring it, like you have to make it, you have to really go in this one direction. So I think she had all this mysticism around cooking. She didn't have ingredients, she didn't have like a weighing thing for how much. She didn't have a scale in her kitchen, so it wasn't like you could put this much flour in or this much of anything. She didn't weigh anything, so everything was just her feeling that she put in the cooking. The amount of something was just how you feel it. It wasn't this precise science, and I loved that when I learned that about her cooking. But it meant that when we were trying to get, ideas of how to recreate her cooking, we couldn't do it because you didn't know how much anything was in it. But you do know there's like 25 eggs in a babka, which I was like, that's a lot of eggs. It's a lot of eggs, but who gives a shit? Like, go for it. I also love the feeling of bar mlecznas in Poland, this very cheap place you can go where all the babcias cook for you and everything's really cheap. And that was from the one thing we liked from the communist era, is the bar mleczna was anyone could go and eat there, so you were very welcome, and it was such good food for nothing. And they're like these little cafes in Poland that stayed, and they're still there, and they haven't been gentrified. Like, Poland has been elevated and there's so much finance there and stuff now, but it hasn't been gentrified because people care about Polish traditions. There's a real sense of a love and a reverence and a sacrifice, a loving loyalty that you have for your family that is there. That's a genuine happy sacrifice. It doesn't feel like, oh my God, I'm giving something else up. It's like, this is the best thing you could be buying into, is this idea of family. The maternal lines are the ones that are really revered. Like, who was your Babcia's Babcia? Because when you have a dowry, you get all of the linen that family had for you. So it's all the Babcias, and your aunts and stuff will have. I have this tablecloth that's beautiful. That was my dowry that Babcia gave me, that she gave me because she gave me when I was young, and she was like, I don't think you're getting married, but I know that this is something you need in your life, which is all your linen from the ancient mums and the grannies. And she had kept this for me, and it's so modern. A lot of the Babcia's fabric and linen and tablecloths were really like old school Babcia vibes, white, hand sewn, and there were other ones that were mustard that she held on for me, and the one that she gave me was like it's like a grey colour, which is so very kind of modern. Like, the grey one is modern. Grey with these Babcia petals and flowers, hand sewn, is just divine. And I remember her giving it to me, and like the speech she gave me when she gave it to me. So it was very cute to be with her. We would always get dressed up for Sunday at church and then Sunday at Babcia's. Like, when I was a really wee girl, we would go to church every Sunday, and Babcia would hold my hand. And it was the coolest thing to just be in there and be quiet and listen to Father Marion, who had married my mum and dad. And he christened all of us. He was very cool. He was the kind of priest who would like wear jeans and stuff. He was really young, and this whole group of people who were exiled from Poland after the war, like the Polish community that I grew up with here in Glasgow, was ex-soldiers and their wives who had been granted asylum here in Britain after the war because they fought with the Allies during the war, and they didn't want to go back to communist Poland, and the Polish government in exile was in London. So the real like democratic government was in exile in London. So the Poles felt like they could come here with their general who stayed here. Jakubski stayed in Glasgow, and because he stayed here after the war, all his men stayed here and all their wives stayed here. So it was like this regiment of very beautiful people who actually survived the war, and miraculously to them survived the war. The thing about me growing up was I was always sitting on their laps in the Polish club, and it's here like on Park Terrace. Like, it's 2 blocks away from where I'm talking. It's like in Finiston, but it's next to the park. You can see there's a Polish flag. It's exactly the same. The Jakubski club is exactly, it's not like the Soho club. It's not like Lulu's in London. It's not like any club here. It's just wooden inside. There's children everywhere. There's grannies everywhere. It's like there's a granny cooking for you downstairs, and there's a pub with a pool table, and you can go in the pub, and it's very wooden, and it feels like you're in Zakopane, and you just can relax, and everything's very cheap. Like, all the people, Scottish people love that pub because it's very cheap. It's very welcoming to everybody. And I had my mum was the president of that club for decades when I was a kid. My whole childhood, my mum was the head of the club, and we would take the Polish soldiers back to their villages every summer in Poland. And my mum organized these trips, and they would tell me about how they got amputated and why they had a wooden leg and why I was sitting on something that I could really like smash and hit. Like, I remember like realizing that I could just hit them and they wouldn't feel it. And they would tell me that they had lost loves, you know, to some train that they couldn't get to in time, and they were running to. They had lost women in front of them being shot by Nazis. They had lost people who were like my jaja, the dad that my mum knew. The only dad like in person she knew was her stepdad Heniusz, who is a Jakubski, and he in the war Babcia had married him here in Poland. After they left Poland, she married him here in Glasgow, and he was a baker. He was someone who had been in the circus. He left Poland when he was 14 with the German army, but then spoke fluent German and then spoke fluent Polish. When he spoke English, he had a Glaswegian accent too, so people thought he was Glaswegian, and then you'd be like, no, he's Polish, because his accent change was so good. And we were like thinking he was a spy, because he did have like 3 passports. And one night he told my gran, Babcia Brona, he told her that he had lost a wife in Italy to the resistance there. Like someone had shot her in front of him and he had to just pretend he didn't know her. And there was all these different things where when I had a project to do about the Second World War when I was in school here, there was all these really basic questions like, what regiment were you in? Who did you fight for? And it was so weird because all the pictures of my Jadzia Heniusz, my step-grandfather from the war, are pictures of him in like a American uniform and then like a Polish uniform, but then in America. You're like, why has he got these different uniforms from different countries throughout this war? It seems very spy-esque, you know. There were things about it he just didn't ever talk about, so you couldn't ask him these basic questions, what regiment were you in, because he didn't answer them. And I tried to explain that in my class, and then, do you know what I mean, like I said something else, I can't even remember what I did on that project, but I like didn't have a good, it wasn't like an easy experience trying to talk to him about it. And I had a dictaphone as well, and I remember, because it was being taped, he was just like, spies don't chat on tape, you know. Yeah, he was like, I asked him a question and he'd be like, I was everywhere, you know. And you'd be like, what the fuck does that mean? But anyway, he had this love for my gran. They had a real connection. When she got to Scotland after the war, my mum was still in Poland, so my mum was like 10. And when Babcia got pregnant with my mum, Babcia said to herself, obviously she was in a Catholic household, it was communist Poland, you weren't supposed to be pregnant out of wedlock. She had fallen in love. The first time she had sex, my gran had fallen in love with this gypsy man who came into town, and the first time she had sex she got pregnant, which is also the irony, you know. She also didn't necessarily have her period because they were so starved during the war. They had moved, God, the Nazis burned their little village in Belarus. So the Nazis, when they invaded Poland, came directly to that forest that my granny was calling home. And with her village, her mom and dad in their little hut, and then the other villagers were all their family. So it was like, you know, all their uncles and aunts, and then all their neighbors and everything, and the people they grew up with. And it was on a day where they were trying to cut my gran's hair, and there was only one pair of scissors in the village. So like Babcia Zosia said to her husband, Babcia's dad, you need to go to the village and like go down to the village, go down the hill and like get the scissors from your brother or whatever, because like there being only one pair of scissors in the village, like they have the scissors right now and we need to cut Bronya's hair. And then because he left to do that, that's when he saw all his brother's houses on fire, like everyone that was there that he loved was being burned, like babies, and being shot. Like the Nazis had taken them out of their village, out of their wee houses, and were shooting them. And so he saw that and he ran back up the hill to escape with his family. They ran out and they forgot the baby, and they had to run back and like pull the baby out from a window or something, from like a weird angle. They had to get the baby because that was Jacek, the little one, who was literally so tiny at the time. And so they didn't know how old Babcia was, but they knew that she was like older than the babies. So they were so malnourished at that point. Once the war started, they walked into Poland. They escaped that Nazi moment, but they also had to just figure out how to survive. The war was so stressful on the country of Poland. There was like a Jewish guy they met on the street who was going to turn them in. Like they were walking past some Jewish dude and he was going to just say, you know, I'm gonna take you guys and I'm gonna turn you into the Nazis and get some kind of benefit from it. And I don't know how they escaped that moment. And then there was another moment where they were like hiding in a bakery because they found like all these towns in Poland that had been abandoned, like people just ran away. So the Polish civilians just escaped, and there were all these empty things. So they were trying to like eat something in this bakery or see if there was any food in the bakery, and they were in an oven standing there because they were hiding because they heard Nazis coming. And that's when Babcia Zosia put her hand over the mouth of the little baby because the baby was crying. And people always thought like, oh my God, did he get like brain damage from that? It was such an intense thing because it was like Babcia Brona, seeing her own mum having to make that decision to like stop a baby's life to save her other children and herself and her husband. And then he kind of survived it, but he wasn't like necessarily a perfectly in health human being. So they never knew if that had anything to do with him being a little off. When he grew up, I feel like that was Babcia's interpretation of that. And all of this is literally me remembering it in bits. So if any of it is wrong, you know, or there's bits of it that have been elaborated through time, I would understand that too. But the stuff about the Nazis burning the village has definitely happened. Because everyone else from that village who survived, there was only a few people. They can all go back and be like, yeah, this is where our huts were or whatever. The most dynamic, like wild forest is where Baba and Babcia have gone back. Like my mom is Baba, so we don't call my mom Babcia yet because it's like Babcia Brona was so iconic. That my mom, instead of being like a granny, is Baba, so it's quite cool because her actual name is Basia, so that works. But when they've gone back, it's been very intense because it was the most natural place to grow up, a wild forest. The other thing that they did was during the war, they were in this mansion house. There was a Jewish family who left a mansion house they had, and you know, man to man, the dad to the dad said to like Babcia's dad, he said, you know, you can stay here, we're leaving, so just stay in the house, and there's a gooseberry field in the back, and eat all the gooseberries and just live in the house. So Babcia lived in this mansion house for a chunk of the war, and all they ate was gooseberries, and that's why the baby also had diarrhea, because they didn't have any other food to give the baby. Which as a mum, if you think about it, is so stressful, which is why I think Babcia and the women from that era in Poland are obsessed with food, have always been, I mean, they've been obsessed with food but since before war times, like, let's get it straight. They're obsessed, like, they make so much food, but this is also why the war happened. And if you take like milk away from a mom, or if you take the ability to feed a child away from a mother during a war, it makes them want to make a shit ton of food for the rest of their life, and that's what Babcia did. So she made food for everybody. On Sundays, we were living like kings and queens. Everyone could feed. I would feed like my mates. Like I would bring mates that I had just met, friends, older friends who had been my friends forever, to Babcia's house. You could just sit there and eat forever, and she would give you like big huge jars like this size, like 5 of these jars filled with her food and her cooking to take home with you, so you'd have food for the whole week. It was really epic. It was like a level of generosity that you don't necessarily see these days in the UK, but it's a very Polish thing. Then she would also have Babcia fashion, where she would hold on to stuff for everyone she'd ever met. She'd be like, you know that friend of yours who came like 2 years ago, give them this jacket because I think they would like it. And it would be like a crazy denim jacket with like dangly tassels on it and like bells on it, and I'd be like, yeah, I can give it to them, Babcia, you know. And it was called Babcia Moda, Babcia fashion. Babcia Moda was epic, and that's how she got me so much of my stuff. She always had socks for me. I never had to buy like underwear in my whole life. She had everything for me that was underwear. She had tight socks, pants, jumpers, tops, everything that was cool. I had a lot of like leopard print shit she got me. Everything that was like my style was very much, Babcia just dressed me. She was like my stylist to the nth degree. So when she passed away, it was really difficult because I had to like, for the first time in my life, like buy pants, buy knickers, buy underwear. I was like, what am I doing? This is so weird. Like, what is my like size of knickers? I don't even know, because it was always something that Babcia did for us. And it was not just me. She was like that to everyone in the family, and all of our friends and anyone who'd ever come to visit her, including Peter Mullen, because they were like besties. And then what happened was, she's in the war, right? So she's in this place where the war was not a good experience in Poland. It was very difficult. And then to go straight into communism and have a corrupt government was really challenging. So I think they had felt like they were doing all this like freedom fighting and believing in democracy. And the realities of the war were so rough and so harsh. So when she was pregnant with my mom, she knew it was like the most illegal thing to do as a Catholic, that you couldn't have a baby out of wedlock. So when she found out she was pregnant, she went to the river and she was gonna throw herself in the river and kill herself. And every time I see a river in my life now, I think about the fact that Babcia was standing there in Poland, pregnant, an ageless young lady. We don't know how old she was. We just know that she was born in the summer. And she was looking at the river and she was like, I'm going to jump in because I know I've done this bad thing where I deserve to go to hell. And she was talking to God, she was praying, and she said, you know, but the problem is she didn't want to kill the baby, because if she killed the baby, that would be an extra sin. And she knew everything that she'd done already was bad. So she was trying to figure out what to do. And she said to God, look, God, if I devote my life to this child and I serve this child for the rest of my life, then maybe you'll forgive me and I'll maybe go to purgatory instead of hell, because she knew she was never going to get into heaven because of what she'd done. So she made that deal with God, didn't kill herself, didn't kill the baby, and like walked away that day. But I think that's when she kind of left her family and didn't explain why she was leaving. She just left and she fucked off to a new town and she called herself Nusha Korczak. Nusha Korczak is a parcel that's in Good Dick. It's like, in Good Dick, there's a there's a moment where you can hear my grandmother's voice, because I like got her voice to be in Good Dick for ADR. From Scotland. I like was in LA and I was like, Babcia Bronya's voice needs to be over this moment when he's like buzzing in to get into the girl's flat or apartment building. You can hear Babcia Bronya say, hello, like over the intercom. And he's like, what's the code to get in, or can you buzz me in or something? And she says, Henush, something, like she says something to Jaja Henush, and it's like what she would say in a normal day in Glasgow. I like made her say it and we put it in the film. And Nusha Korczak is a package that you get the gate code from. Like the guy who's coming into her house to try and woo the girl gets the gate code from like a package to Nusha Korczak. So it was all very like me saying hi to Babcia, because Nusha Korczak is such a fucking epic name. If you're gonna like leave a town and like, I don't know, if you're gonna be ostracized in Poland, like it's so cinematic to be ostracized in Poland and like run away from your family pregnant and just have made this deal with God to be a good person and all of this stuff. And it's so like religious, and it's so what Jesus would have done. So it's funny that Babcia was Nusha Korczak in this new town, and I know she had like a really difficult time. She saved a little boy from like a passing tram. He was gonna die, and she like pulled this kid off of the road. And the mum who was watching this happen, the boy's mum was like, oh my God, you have to like, let me help you, like please stay with us and like you can like, look after him and I'll give you a place to stay. And this other mom had helped Babcia so much with my mom, and because she'd saved this boy's life, and it was all these like very valiant things she had done that she just talked about very casually, but it was like, this woman's a fucking superhero, like where does she get the strength? And also she went to this new town, and the nuns that when she was giving birth, the nuns, I'm sorry guys, but like this is so sad. It's like so harrowing. It's like a Chekhov play in the bad moments. It's like the worst and dodgiest parts of Shakespeare, where you're in the dark storm and you're never getting out. She was by herself, she was giving birth, and the nuns who were helping her give birth would say to her all this crazy stuff and had all these like this attitude with her because they thought that she was bad. And they said, you're screaming now, but you weren't screaming when he was on top of you. And I remember like hearing all of Babcia's stories from her mouth, hearing it from the horse's mouth, and just being like, who would do that to young women? Like, let's not do that to the young ladies. Like, just give them the dignity. Plus, if we care about babies, right? Like, if we want the babies to be revered and looked after, and if we want everyone to be fruitful and multiply, you can't shame anyone for anything. You can't do that shame game. It doesn't work. And so Babcia had to get over that and like elevate herself from all of these wild themes in the society at that time. And God's sake, it's still there now. That's the thing, it's still there now. So when she was staying with this lady, people were like, so how come you got this baby? How come you've got a daughter, Barbara, who's called Basia, Barbara in Polish? How come you have this little girl and you don't have a husband, you know? And Babcia would be like, he died in the war. And like the dates really didn't work out. Like it was definitely like a post-war baby. It's like a definitely post-war baby. Like it's like 10 years after the war that my mom was conceived like really in the 50s, or she was born in 63 or 68 or something like that, like in the 60s. So it was even like 20 years after the end of the war, kind of. So it wasn't like, it didn't make sense to be like, he died in the war. Like it didn't really, honestly, people were like, when she would say that, but like she couldn't say anything else. She couldn't be like, I fell in love with a gypsy. He wooed me for one night. He left. I didn't know what the fuck to do. I didn't think I would be pregnant. And then I was in love with him, but then he was gone. And then all these things were also truthful that she dealt with from a very ethical place. And then she got sick as well. I remember Babcia was in hospital one time, and my mom had to walk herself to school. She had to have her key around her neck, like this chain that I have, this little snake today that's a wee magnet. Where did I get this? Honestly, I think I got this from Play Clothes in LA. Play Clothes is like an authentic place you can go and get vintage stuff in Los Angeles. It's in the Valley. Play Clothes is a really good shout out. That's where I used to wear like all my dresses that I wore on Ned's for the premieres and stuff. They were all like vintage from like old ladies who had died in Los Angeles, like send all their stuff to Play Clothes, and you just go, oh my God, like these are like very authentic, like authentic designer, everything. And they have little jewelry bits that you go, that's so nice. And my mom would have to walk she'd have to walk herself to the hospital to wave to my gran. Then she'd walk herself to school, and then she'd walk back, wave to my gran, and then walk herself back to their flat. And she'd unlock it with her own key as a child. And to me, I just like loved that story, like my mom's independence. When my gran was in the hospital, my mom like really my Babcia being like, look, you have to do this because I'm in the hospital sick, so you have to sort your life out and like do this and like be a grown-up. This idea was always like put in my mom's head, like you better sort your life out, like you're not it was like life was too high stakes at that time for anyone to act out or like be a bad child. Like it wasn't, you can't, this is kind of like why I think there's so much like ethics passed down in Poland, because you cannot be a bad child when the stakes are so high. Like you can't like mess up or be selfish or think about what you want to do. It's like you have to do what the family is saying because we have to survive, you know? So it's not like listen to mom and dad because that's what you should do. It's like we have to do that. Otherwise we're all going to pass away. The stakes are so high. And like then Babcia would get out of hospital and she'd do stuff like go find a kitten and get a kitten for my mum for Christmas or just a surprise. Like one day there was like Babcia had like a big fur coat that she would wear in the winters, and she came back and she went like that, and out of her sleeve fell like a kitten for my mum to have as a present, and my mum was just over the moon. And they just loved each other, you know. They would listen to Violeta Vilas, who was so iconic. She was the kind of Polish Edith Piaf, without the kind of dark side. There wasn't a dark side to Violeta Vilas. She was just like, I love my mom, I love my life, I wear nice clothes. She had like these blue eyes and like blonde hair, and Violeta always had big massive gloves, white gloves, and she was so stylish and very Polish, very beautiful, and just talked about maternal love constantly. That loving feeling extended to this song called Mama, Mama, and it's like so epic about loving your mother and your mom loving you. That's very much a part of who we kind of revered growing up as kids too. This idea that Polish cinema is kind of like better than other films. You had Wajda, you had Kieślowski, you had the Łódź Film School. You have all these filmmakers coming out of Poland now that are on fire too. I mean, the best DPs came out of Poland, you know, like Spielberg's cinematographer came out of Poland, Łódź Film School. Everyone is very cinematic there because they know how to make something very beautiful. Because there is that listening reverence, that feeling of epic love, and this idea in the Warsaw ghetto and the Warsaw situation where people left for that war, like these little teenagers left for that war, people Babcia's age at the time left for the war with like 2 pairs of socks because they thought it was going to last 2 weeks or something, and it lasted like, you know, 4 years. It lasted like their entire lives, and they lost all their best friends and their family members, and then they were like, should have brought more socks. After the war was over, it was like, wait, what the fuck just happened? Because we're the ones who survived, so why did we survive? How come we get to live when all of the people we knew died? So you better live like every single day as if it's a dream heaven, because who are these young children who are coming up who don't know anything about that feeling, and how do you continue on? It's very it's like, oh my god, you feel like you've won the lottery every single second because you survived. And I know she had that feeling a lot when she went back to her parents with my mom when she was 10. My mom was 10, and she said, look, I'm going to go to see my ciocia, her auntie, had been writing letters to Poland saying Glasgow had red carpets that you could fall in like this, and everything was so beautiful in Glasgow. It was this very luscious, perfect place and luxurious, and everything was so tasty, and the food was amazing, and everything about it was sounding like palatial. So like my granny's aunt had sent all these letters back to Poland, really like selling Scotland, and Babcia, my granny, after the war end, thought to herself, you know, I'm gonna go there because there'll be more opportunities and stuff, and you know, who doesn't want to go west? So she said to her mom and dad, can you look after my daughter Basia? Like my mom and like my mom had just met her grandparents for the first time because so much random stuff had happened, that Babcia ended up going back to her mom and dad and saying, look, this is your grandchild and this is what happened and here's the whole story, and I want to go to Scotland, and can you look after her like for a little while I'm in Scotland, and then I'll call for her, and when I call for her, like, send her to me. So Babcia had decided to do that, and my mom had to say bye to her mom, and she ended up living in Poland like with her grandparents for a year, and was like Rysiek, her Rysiek's Babcia's brother, and Rysiek was so cool, and like they were like best buddies, and they would like go to school together and like do all this cool stuff in Poland, and like, I don't know, it was a very cool time. And if you look at a picture of my mum, she looks exactly like me, she looks exactly like Babcia, we all look exactly the same. So any member of the family that comes in, my niece Tara looks exactly like Babcia. So if you ever miss her, you can just like look at other members of the family and just go like, wow, she's in all of us. And that feeling of going to Scotland, it's just so wonderful. And she got here and there was no Tinder, there was no Bumble, there was no like, there was no internet. So you didn't even have phones or anything. So you couldn't like get someone's number. Like, it was hard to meet people. So she was literally in a Polish club and she was with her aunt, and she was trying to meet these men, and I think her aunt set her up with this really fancy, very wealthy guy who owned hotels. So he was like an expat from Poland but living here, and they went to dinner, and this was like Babcia's like kind of first date of her whole life essentially. But also the guy ordered, it wasn't just that he was rude to the waiters, but he said he ordered for her. That's it. He ordered for Babcia. So it was this moment where Babcia was kind of like, well, what the fuck am I here for if he's going to order for me? And, you know what I mean? She'd never order for a guy. She'd never be like, yo, without even asking. Like, it's one thing if you're like, I know this restaurant and I'll order for us because like it's faster, and there's all these like we have to share anyway, so like let's all just like I'll do it because it's faster and then we can chat or something. It wasn't like that. It was very patronizing. And then they had like a nice meal or whatever, but Babcia was like, that's not my husband, you know. And I love that she said no to like Mr. Wealthy, because she would never have thought of it that way. She just didn't think of shit like that, you know. She wasn't like, well, he had a hotel and and he would have been, you know, someone to have, like, she never thought of it like that. That was my thing, where I always loved this part of her life, because she could have and should have like gotten with some guy who was a millionaire or something, and she's the one that was like, no, like, fuck that shit, that guy is like, I can't even have dinner with him, like, get fucked. Her whole thing is, you have to like that guy. If you're gonna be with somebody, you have to like them. Even if you're gonna kiss someone, you have to like be attracted to them to this point where you're just like, oh my god, like, this is a magnetic vibe. Like, we're magnets, you know, that thing where it's chemistry, because you have chemistry that's 100% or you have 0. And that's the thing, like, Babcia taught me as a woman, you can't like pretend that there's chemistry when there's not. You can't take anything from 0 and go, well, you know, he's a millionaire, so I'll just make that shit work, when there's no attraction, and you don't have the sparky feeling, and there's no, like, I like this person so much. I like him more than my work. I like him more than all the films I've done. I like him more than any books I've read. Like, she had this passion that was so, it wasn't romance. It was like spiritual, awakened connection between a man and a woman that is absolutely beyond. It was like not just religious. It was like an imperative. It was like the most important thing to her in her life, and she wasn't gonna just give that shit up for some random who ordered for her rudely. So then she met my Jaja Heniush. he had a bakery here in Scotland. He was a baker, and she thought, oh my God, he's a baker, like that's so cool. And she felt compelled that she could get my mum to come. You know, she married him here, she got my mum to come, and then he adopted my mum, and then they were all kind of like living in the same place here in Glasgow, and they would go to the Polish club still, because the Polish club is like the center of the universe at that time for every Pole, and they could talk about, you know, the idea of what it meant to be here. Like my mum was living in Milton, but she she was like a Milton Tong's girlfriend for like 5 seconds, and then I guess she wasn't anymore. She used to take my Uncle Peter like in his pram when he was a baby. She'd take him outside in Glasgow to go like snog this Milton Tong, because she was like really into this guy, and he was so Scottish and my mom was like so Polish, and she had like black eyes. My mom doesn't have a pupil because her eyes are so black from her gypsy blood. Her gypsy dad also meant that none of us burn in the sun. We don't I never have to put suntan lotion on because I just get black. I don't go red. My mom is the same. She doesn't necessarily, I mean, she's very Roma-esque. When we saw the play Jerusalem, that play is literally like about Roma people, and it was when Mark Rylance is talking about the blood, he was like looking directly at my mom. I had already seen Jerusalem by myself, and I like screamed, cried in New York, and like ran back to my hotel room because I would think I was doing egg at the time in New York. And I ran down 8th Avenue. Like I literally had not, you don't like run around in New York, you always get like the subway or you get in a taxi. So I was so inspired by that play, I just ran back to my hotel room all the way down Manhattan, to the Flatiron. I mean, it's not that far, it's like 20 blocks or something, but like, I think it was winter, and I just was like, that play was so good. I saw it on St. George's Day, and Mark Rylance, after the performance, talked about St. George after the standing ovation. And I was like, I have to bring my mom back to see this place. So I got my mom to come back to New York with me, and we stayed at the Ace Hotel for 5 days. And our whole thing was we're there to see Jerusalem. And my mom and I, oh my God, the sun went behind the cloud. My mom and I got to sit there while Mark Rylance was looking right at my mum for the Roma lines about that play, about having Roma blood and what it means, and that giants are real. It felt like my life, that play was my life on the stage, because magic and Babcia, magic and being able to be magical in real life and just live a life of being a magical person, and ethical and good, all of those things were really part of just me going to school every day and stuff like that. It felt really normal, a part of who I was. And so to be able to see someone write a play about a magical person, it just felt like Jez Butterworth had done something that was beyond comprehension in a funny way, because just, it felt like my family that he was talking about. Like, it just felt like us. So I got to see that play. I said to my mom, I want to go to see it again, because Mark Rylance was so incredible. When he came out, he was like 1,000%. And I was like, where's he going to go from here if he's at 1,000? And he went to 2,000%, and then beyond that. And we were all just like, Jesus fucking Christ. And I was like, I have to see it again to see what the fuck he's going to do in the second performance. Like, is he going to do his performance by rote exactly the same as that? And he didn't. He did it like in the moment. Everything was so different, and then continued from 1,000 to the next level. And you just go, wait a minute, like, what an artist. Like, so I was very inspired by that, and it made me think of Babcia Brona. So anyway, my mom was like here, and she was snogging. She's like this Polish expat, like looks like a robot with her robot eyes, her like fully black pupils, and black, everything's black. Kissing this Milton Tong, and my Uncle Peter was like in his pram shaking cold. And I think when my mum brought him back, my granny was really upset, because she got like screamed at, she got told off. Like, it was a very kind of like strict household for my mum, because she wanted to go to a concert, and my mom's parents, like her stepdad and my Babcia, were like, you're not going to a concert, are you joking? There was stuff like people came to town, like Donny Osmond or whatever came to town and like did concerts, and my mom never got to go because she wasn't even allowed to leave her house. So she met Auntie Sue in her school, and my Auntie Sue was Sikh, and my mum would go, they would be like the two kind of outsiders in Glasgow at Garnet Hill in their wee school, and my mum went to like Auntie Sue's house, and my mum brought like, for some fucking reason, I don't know why they had corned beef in like the cupboard at Babcia's house, but Babcia didn't necessarily use corned beef, but like it was in the cupboard or something, and my mum took it to give it as a gift to Auntie Sue's house because it was like her best mate. Like, this is such a big deal, and in Poland you have to go with something to someone's house, especially the first time you meet them. And it was like, oh my god, that went over like a bowl of cold sick, because you don't give Sikh people beef, like they don't eat it. So Auntie Sue's family from the beginning were a wee bit like, who's this lady coming in not understanding our traditions? And I think my mum never really lived that down with Auntie Sue's family. And also this idea that Glasgow at that time was the 70s, and so there was a lot of stuff happening, and my mum was a teenager, very innocent, had dolls in her bed as a teenager still, like was kind of an infant. And then when she hit a certain age, she would be sent to the Polish club by my granny, because my Dziadzia Heniusz, like my stepdad, was always drinking vodka. He was always gambling in the slot machines at the Polish club, and he would go and he would like spend all his money on the slot machines gambling. And my mum was like, oh my god. And Babcia said to my mum, you need to go and make sure he doesn't spend all the money, like, you know what I mean? Like, go watch him. So my mum was kind of like his bodyguard, and my mum would sit there and she would boredly like wear a nice dress, because it was like her only social life to go to the Polish club bar. She didn't have anything else to do. Like, there were no other events, and so she had this like red dress on. I think it was a red dress, and she's sitting there like rolling her eyes because Dziadzia Heniusz had gone and put all this money in the slot machine and then sat down, and he was like, after this drink we'll go home. And it was already a bit late. And then, you know, what happened on my dad's side of the family is so wild, because my dad is the oldest of four, and his dad was Polish. Palka is a Polish name. So the funniest thing about it is ski, like Jakubski, Sikorski, all of the names that you could have that my mom had growing up, because she had different names. She had Babcia's original last name. She had other last names when she was growing up that were all ski, and that's very aristocratic. That's an aristocratic name. But Palka is like a working class name. So if it's a ski, you're fancy, and if it's not, you're not. So ironically, like, the person that came into her life was a Palka, like my dad, there was Palka. So it was unbelievable on that side of things, because my dad was actually born in Scotland to his Polish dad and his Irish mum, his Dublin Irish mum. So I have quadruple Catholic, but it's one Irish and the rest is Polish. And it's just interesting because my dad's whole side of the family is a whole epic journey, where he was the oldest of all these kids, and his mom had been divorced and left by his dad, and his dad went away to be with this other woman who was somebody that they never saw. And when he was growing up, like, his dad wasn't really there. So my dad was like being a little truanty or something, and then I think he was at one point sent to live with, he was being bad, like he was putting like flour in people's post boxes and stuff like that, like a little hooligan, like a bored boy. And my gran Helen was saying to him, to his dad, look, you have to take him. Franciszek was his dad's name. Look, Franciszek, you have to take Terry because Tadeusz is being horrible and ridiculous and doing all this bad stuff, so you need to like take him and discipline him. And instead of taking him to his new house with his new wife with his 4 new children, his Polish dad got him a flat, had a flat in like Woodlands that he put him in. Franciszek had a lot of real estate in Glasgow. He had lots of money. He had a bag company called, I don't know if it was Palka Bags at the time, but it was a bag company. And he had real estate, so he put my dad in this flat when my dad was basically an infant and he was too young to live alone. And he just left money on the bed and was like, have a good life, basically. And would come back and give him money, but didn't necessarily chat to him or anything. And there was no like close relationship. So my dad started to teach himself French. He thought he was going to marry Francois Hardy. So he had these LPs of Francois Hardy that I'm sure he got like from like some Woodlands Road vintage shop shop that sold LPs, and he literally thought Francois Hardy was his future wife, and so he was just preparing to meet her. And he also had these brothers and sisters that he had to kind of like know about or look after, and his dad was not part of his life. My dad he got into Edinburgh University to do fine art. He was going to do his like final exam there to get his degree. It was like the last day that he would need to pass this exam in order to get his degree. It was like the last moment. He didn't have to go back to Edinburgh after that, but he was always like working for my grandfather, because it was like this random thing where my grandfather would ask him to come back to Glasgow and do odd jobs, and it was like manual labor that my dad would like have to pick up all these bags and put them in a truck so that my grandfather could drive the lorry down to London or Manchester, wherever he was going to sell these bags, because he had this wholesale bag company. Franciszek Palka had like all these businesses, and my dad didn't want to go because he had to study for his exam and he wanted to get his fine art degree, and his father didn't understand any of that. So my dad just showed up and was really upset and told him to basically fuck off and that he didn't love him. He never loved him. And his dad said the same thing. I don't love you. I never did. And his dad drove away with all the bags and to Manchester, and my dad like went back to Edinburgh, and then his mum phoned him and was like, your father's dead. He's been in a car accident. And my dad had to come back to Glasgow, didn't get his fine art degree, had to go to a funeral with his dad and like his dad's 4 other children that they all were just meeting for the first time, and his dad's second wife that nobody ever had met or talked to, and they had to like deal with all of that. And also in Poland, and kind of in general, but in Poland definitely, everything's left to the oldest son. So my dad didn't have the ability to be an artist like he wanted to. He only suddenly at the youngest age possible had to become a businessman out of his like kicking and screaming. He didn't want to be a businessman, so he had to run his dad's company. He didn't even like his dad. He had to run this company of this man he didn't like and respect, and he felt also really guilty about saying I don't love you too, and then had to deal with the dynamics of like his other family and giving them money, and like those other children who are so innocent in the situation. It was a very, very, very hardcore and intense time, and my dad started his own company with the bag business in Glasgow. He kept that company going and like was keeping it all afloat. And my dad's sister, Auntie Amel, was very like hippie, well-dressed, cool lady, very Glasgow, but like Polish blood, like looks like Diane Bell, if you want to know who she looked like. Diane Bell is the woman that I gave an award to at Sundance in 2010 on TV. And I was like, yo, Scottish women unite. And also she looks like my Auntie Amel. I said that in like her acceptance speech or whatever, in my like offering her award. I said like, she looks like my fucking family. And if you look at pictures of my Auntie Amel and you look at pictures of Diane Bell, I'm not wrong. So like, that's just true. The Polish gene is strong. And maybe it's a bit of Irish as well. I don't know what it was, but that side of the family all looked the same. My dad was like 6'4", had no idea that he was a tall man, like nothing, had no idea that he was photogenic, like had no idea that he had like these huge curls. He looked like David, like the statue of David. He looked like an Adonis, and he had no idea. And he never acted like that. So he was very kind of like wacky and silly and effervescent and bubbly. Like he kind of had like a Bette Midler vibe. He was like, I wish I could have been an opera singer. I wish I could have been a painter. Like he was always saying all these things, like that he understood Pavarotti as a man, you know, like he would say things and you would be like, yeah, okay, that's a funny, like that would work on TV if you're doing like a really funny, witty show at night, like a talk show in the middle of the night. Anyway, like late night in America. But anyway, so Auntie Mel said to my dad at one point, look, you're kind of overworked. You don't have like anything going on. Let's just go to the Polish club. Because they didn't really like their dad, and they didn't like the necessarily Polish vibes. They didn't accept it. It wasn't like their favorite thing, but they did know that the Polish club was their place too. So they went. My Auntie Mel walked in the Polish club that night that my mum was there with Jaja, with Jaja Heniusz, and Jaja Heniusz had just finished his pint, saying we're gonna go home after I finish this drink. And my mum was also doing this with her glass, like bored as hell, because she would just sit there. It was like a wine glass or a champagne glass or something, and she'd sit there and she'd make this like whoo noise. She was doing that, and she had this like very epic dress on, and obviously no makeup, but like my dad walked into the club bar, and if you walk in, you see it's still exactly the same as it was in the 70s. It's never going to change. And it was exactly the same in Babcia's day. So like, you know, in the 50s it was the same. But if you walk in there, it's very small, and you'll feel like how you just, if someone walks in, like you look, who's in the door, who's coming in. And this was a hub full of like old Polish soldiers. This is their place. So it was very kind of like their night. And my dad, Terry Tadeusz, walks in with his Auntie Mel, with my Auntie Mel, his sister. And, you know, she's just like, my Auntie Mel's being like so funny. And my dad sees my mum, and they have like a love at first sight. Well, my dad describes as a love at first sight, like eye contact thing. Because my dad was like, who's this woman? She's more beautiful than Francois Hardy. Like, this is my wife. And my mum was kind of like, who's that hairy man? Because he had a beard and like had very long, like curly hair. So I don't think she necessarily, I don't know, she wasn't like, wow, you know, she was kind of thinking more of, at the time, like her teenage crushes, like Donny Osmond or Puppy Love, those kind of like old school, like 70s little sweetheart boys, you know. And my dad was a wee bit more of a man. He was also 28 and a virgin at that time, and my mom was like 18, so they had like a 10-year age gap. And so there was a lot of like funky vibes, because they're all Polish, but my dad said something that like fucked the situation, where this is what happened actually. They weren't going to ever talk to each other, because my dad was like, that's my future wife, I'm shocked, what am I going to do? And Auntie Mel went over to the slot machine, because my granddad had been putting all of his money into that slot machine for like a year or whatever. So much of no one else put money in that slot machine. And then Auntie Mel walked up to it. It was like my grandfather's slot machine, and everyone who's like his old soldiers, all his pals from the war, are like looking at Auntie Mel like, why is this stranger coming into our pub gonna play the slot machine? And she puts in 1 10 pence. It's a jackpot, and she wins all of my grandfather's money. And she kind of clocks that this is an awkward situation for people, and that this is sort of like Jaja's machine, so Jaja Heniusz. So she's kind of like, I'll buy everyone a drink. And then that's how they started talking, because Auntie Mel was like, look, sorry, I'll get you whatever you want. And then my granddad was sitting there with Auntie Mel, and then my dad could say, somebody said something like, why don't you two dance? Or somebody said something like to my mom and dad, like, do you want to do this thing? Like, maybe it was like, you guys could go dance. Because I think that, I don't know, someone clocked that there was a vibe between the two of them. And what my dad said in Polish was really insulting. But what he meant to say was, I can't imagine ever doing that, because I would be too honored to do something like that. Like, I'm not good enough to dance with such a beautiful woman. But he didn't say that. He was like, never in my life would I dance with this chick. And it was like really bad. And everyone was like, wow. And my mom was a wee bit like insulted, like, who the fuck's this guy? Like, whatever. Maybe he's like just shit at Polish. Because his Polish was, he wasn't like an intellectual on a Polish level. Like, he had definitely been raised in Scotland, and like the Polish on his side was very like bittersweet. It wasn't that Babcia love of like the female side. It was kind of like his dad that had been there and not been there, and been present and then not present, and been there and not. So it was very, he had a lot of like complex emotions with the Polish side. So when he would be Polish, he was good, but it was very much not like the love of his life language. You know what I mean? Like, when you speak Polish, there's a million words for love. They have, like, the Eskimos have a million words for snow, and we have a million words for love. There's a love of your Babcia is different than the love of your wife. Love of your friend is different from the love. There's different yous as well in Polish. There's like, hi, and I meet you and we're strangers, but then we become friends. There's a different you use. You never say you about like a priest or your Babcia. You never say you about your Babcia. You never say you about like if it's your boss, you don't say that. You just use like his, you say like, does the priest want some more tea? As opposed to, do you want some more tea, mate? You know what I mean? If you're sitting with the priest, you don't, even if you've known him for your whole life, it doesn't matter. You never get into friendship with him, because you're respecting. So the language is filled with like levels of respect, and the ability to show reverence in Polish is very beautiful.